Cool. So, Mitch, excited to chat. And really, I've been, I guess, admiring your stuff from a distance for quite some time. The first thing I kind of want to get into is kind of paint the picture of what the property business looks like as it stands. So, yeah, just give
Mm.
us an insight into that.
Yeah, so currently as it stands, I've had businesses probably, up to 2021. So I mean, I've only been full-time property really for the last like 4 years or so.
Okay.
So I think I first invested in property. My first property was 2012. So I've been invested in property for about 13 years now. But as I said, full-time since selling the businesses in 2021. And really what it looks like is, in terms of portfolio size, we're about 15 million. I think when we convert the current pipeline and sort of build that out, I think we'll be at circa 17 mil, something like that. I watched your video the other day, road to 100 mil, and I'd like to think that I'm on a similar sort of path. But yeah, really just, taking each day as it comes, building out the portfolio, raising funds. We've got a decent team around us in terms of sort of build team. And obviously I'm starting to build out sort of more of the admin team as well, just to sort of support on that journey. So yeah, and that's what's crazy really. You can have, a large portfolio and, you sit in the office on your own some days and, sometimes it's a bit surreal, but yeah, as I said, we're obviously on the path to 100 mil and, just taking each day as it comes really.
So, what kind of assets make up the kind of current pipeline and the bulk of the portfolio?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, a lot of what you see online is like high-end HMOs, and people sort of know me for high-end HMOs. We've got co-living brands, Spaces Co-living. I've got like an educational community as well, the HMO Academy, which I've just recently launched. But actually, a lot of my portfolio is made up of single lets. So,
Mhm.
since buying that first property in 2012, I've been buying a lot of single lets. Bought a lot in the northwest, and really just been consistent over that 10 years. Just yeah, picking up. So I think I've got about 36 properties in and around Warrington, which is an area that I chose. Got some stuff down in Portsmouth, and then a lot of the stuff is local to me in and around Essex. Got HMO rooms, got blocks of flats. Obviously got my own residential house. Yeah, so it's predominantly sort of single lets, HMOs, and we've got a bit of commercial to residential. So yeah, it's made up of all types of assets really.
And the pipeline as it stands now, the stuff that you're kind of focusing on and building out moving forward, is it still just high-end HMOs or still a mix of everything?
Yeah, to be honest, I mean, in the last, I say, few weeks or months, I mean, from what you see online, our typical, what I call is our bread and butter is, buy the large Victorian house, 1900s
Hmm.
house, 1600 square foot, no extension. We'll just do like a sui generous 7 bed on the existing footprint, in and out within 15 weeks, refinance, try and get all of our capital back out and go again. That's sort of our model. But definitely, I would say that that market is becoming a bit more competitive. It's a little bit more saturated. I think just when you look at all markets and all things, it's all very suppressed at the moment. Whether it's sales, lettings, and I'm seeing that across the board. It doesn't really matter what area you're in. That HMO market is quite competitive. So where I want to move towards once we've converted the existing houses is more commercial to residential. And more than likely commercial to HMO, just have much more scope to work with commercial buildings, and I think you just get much less pushback when obviously you're developing in a commercial area as opposed to a residential area. So obviously sometimes it'll be flat, sometimes HMOs, but yeah, going to move more towards commercial to residential. So yeah, that's where we're moving towards. Obviously, you need to be thinking bigger as well. You need to think a lot bigger than the 350 grand houses if you want to get to 100 mil. So again, just sort of taking the steps and scaling up. Yeah, as we go, really.
And where do you see, when you say you've seen more competition on those kind of bread and butter HMO conversions, is that kind of on the purchase of the original asset, like you find the prices getting pushed up, or is it on the actual leasing, the renting out of the rooms, you kind of seeing a drop in
Yeah,
or more
I mean,
competition?
yeah, certainly not on the acquisition. I mean, again, because we're quite well known locally, got a good profile, work with a lot of local agents.
Mhm.
I've no concerns about picking the properties up at the right prices, but I just think we never do a room smaller than 8.5 square meters. Obviously, that's the minimum size, without needing a larger communal space. And Yeah, I just think, you get high churn on those size rooms, and also, lots of people are converting houses, and I think those smaller rooms. I mean, I actually said the other day, they're a race to the bottom. Those smaller 8.5 square meter rooms. I mean, I wouldn't go as far as saying that, because I think there is definitely a need for all accommodation. But I just think, if you want to be in a space um, with less competition, I'm thinking more commercial to residential, larger 15 square meter rooms, you know, kitchenettes, en suites, yeah, more self-contained. So that's really and obviously, to be able to do that, you have to have, the size to be able to do it. And that's why I want to move towards commercial to residential. So yeah, it's not in the acquisition of the property. Again, we've got an in-house build team, so we can pretty much build at cost, which means we can always pay a little bit more for the properties. So, there's no competition there. It's just a case of, it's the number of rooms. Yeah. So I just feel like the supply of rooms has finally met demand in this market. So it's just a case of adjusting before taking the next steps forward, really.
No, I love that. Um, and so who's we? Who else is involved in this with you?
So, I mean, predominantly, all of those properties in Warrington is myself.
Sure.
Yeah, but I've got now two JV partners. So I've got one with Tommy Edney. Yeah, so I've got four HMOs with him. I think that's about 35 rooms, something like that. Bedroom. I've just recently set up a new joint venture in an SPV with a new investor who is much more liquid. That's it's. I'm looking forward to that partnership. So yeah, there's obviously my own stuff. I've probably out of all of my HMOs, I probably own half of them myself, and then the other half is made up of joint ventures. So yeah, me and two others.
The first joint venture partner you mentioned, what did you say his name was?
Tommy Edney. So yeah, he's got a social profile. His wife Danielle Edney. She was in Toweys.
Okay.
She's yeah, she's got a good following. But yeah, no, I mean, actually known Tommy, for probably about 10, 12 years. Yeah, I mean, again, he had money to invest, reached out and said, I love what you're doing with the HMOs. Can I get involved? And I thought, been friends for quite a while, and when someone says, got a few 100,000 to put to work, then it just
Okay.
makes sense, really. So I had the experience, been through that sort of investment cycle a number of times with the high end HMOs, and we had a pipeline to sort of fulfill. So yeah, it just worked, really.
So your partnerships, then it's more you're the developer, then the partner brings the funding to the table. Do you have any partnerships where it's like they're the developer with you, maybe someone that's kind of taking the lead on the actual construction project management side, and you're responsible for acquisitions and capital raising, or is it primarily just you at the front leading the way?
Yeah, so obviously my build team is headed up by my brother-in-law. So Luke
Okay,
is with my sister, which is always quite nice because there's a level of loyalty there, at least I hope
sure.
anyway. So yeah, we've got a build team of about eight. Yeah, and I mean I've incentivized them through the projects rather than giving up equity. So I mean I'm a big believer of try and retain as much of the pie as possible, not in a greedy sense, but just don't
Sure.
don't give it up sort of willy nilly. I mean if you're giving up half the pie, you've got to do twice the amount of work. So why would you want to do that? So I incentivize the guys through, yeah, as I said, through the projects. And yeah, so really my job is about, going out, sort of promoting my personal profile to find sites, raise finance. And, I'd like to say that I've probably done that with the more recent partnership with Dave that we've just sort of created. Um,
Okay.
which is nice. I mean, like, it's funny because I've got this far really, on a shoestring, I'd like to think,
Uh-huh.
just, put your dividend to work, or, trying to refinance that or sell a business. And you think, well, it's probably taken me like 10 years to get to 12 million. And I reckon we could probably add 5 million of assets in 1 year with the level of capital we've got sort of around us now. So, yeah, it's much more exciting.
And is that the biggest bottleneck for you guys, you think, capital? Like if you could unlock more capital, where would the other constraints be?
Yeah, I'd say it's probably like I'm gonna say a two-prong approach, but it's more like a three-prong. I guess you've got access to capital, deal flow, and then obviously the operation of actually getting it over the line. I think they're your three core sort of pinch points. I feel like the capital element now is probably sort of been resolved with the
Okay.
JVs we've got in place. Deal flow, I mean, obviously that's always ongoing, and I suppose it's getting the right level of deals. For me, given the level of capital we've got available now, I actually would like to move away from development as well. If you want to move, developments take a long time. You got to acquire it, do the bridging finance, go through planning, get building control sign off, refinance. I mean, doesn't matter as how quick you are on the build side, it is a long process. If you get it done within 6 months, you're doing well. So, I'd like to grow quicker. And the way I would do that is just acquire, you might have seen my story, blocks of flats, distressed assets, buy 25% below market, buy cash, sit there for 6 months, refinance, and put it back into the portfolio and go again. That's the way I would like to grow. So I'm looking for those sorts of deals, but also do development as well. So yeah, the idea is to always build equity through development,
Yeah.
with the team that we've got. But definitely I'd like to pick up yeah, some distressed portfolios. Can certainly grow a lot quicker that way. So
Yeah. No, I get it. I get it. But let's look at a typical kind of development that you would do, whether it's a commercial conversion or even just one of the houses you'd convert sui generis.
yeah,
How do you like to buy in terms of, are you taking on planning risk, or do you always kind of try and make a conditional offer subject to planning? What does it look like from
yeah.
that perspective?
I mean, I'll go through our bread and butter deal, and then I'll talk about like a commercial to HMO deal that
Sure.
we've done. So yeah, our bread and butter is, as I said, a Victorian house, 1900s, 1500 to 1600 square foot, can make a 7 bed on the existing footprint, no extension. And our sweet spot in terms of all of the numbers, 350 grand purchase. Sometimes it can be a little bit more, 325. Sometimes it could be a little bit higher. And generally, we'll spend about 20 grand per bedroom. So that's taking the overall cost of the project, divide it by the number of bedrooms. And that will give us roughly what our build cost would be. Again, sometimes it could be a little bit higher if you've got maybe like a lot of external works, or if you're doing maybe like a higher end finish. Now, we have done them as high as 27, but I have converted them as low as 18 grand a bedroom for a more sort of standard fit out. So it's understanding sort of what your tenant profile is before you go into that. But again, roughly 350 for purchase, sort of 140 for the build cost. And then we're getting obviously a commercial valuation on 7 bedrooms, sort of anywhere between sort of 650 and 700 grand.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's our sort of sweet spot. And then, we get 7 bedrooms renting for £800 a month. Yeah, which is obviously like roughly about 60 grand a year. Yeah, so that's really our sort of sweet spot in terms of that. Have you got any questions on that before I speak about the commercial sort of to residential?
So when you're buying, are you taking planning risk? I mean, you're happy to, you got a relationship with the council, you kind of
Yeah,
know what they like and they don't like.
I mean they don't like any HMO, but yeah. So obviously we operate in the non-Article 4 area, so we'll just buy the property. We'll buy a C3 property. You know,
Yeah.
we don't really need to do subject twos because this is non-Article 4. So under permit development, we can submit our lawful development certificate to go from C3 to C4. That would then obviously be a 6 bed HMO. And then we'll have to then do a full planning application to then convert that. Well, basically just for the one additional bedroom, but it is a change of use. So going from C4 to sui generis. Yeah, it's quite painful operating in and around Southend. You've got a council that just absolutely despises HMOs. Everything gets pulled into committee. I actually got one refused last week because the shower room was on a different floor to the bedroom. So the bedroom was on the first floor, shower room was on the ground floor. Even though we were providing 7 shower rooms and you only need 2 for a 7 bed HMO, they still found reason to refuse it. And I guess that's what's the frustrating thing is that, I know I'll get it at appeal. There's some architects in some areas, maybe down like in Portsmouth in London, that they're actually getting change of use from 6 to 7 via a certificate of lawful use rather than a full plan application. But obviously we won't get away with that down in Southend. So it is a low risk strategy in terms of the planning, but if they want to make your life difficult, they will do. So on that one, we're going to re-put in the application, shuffle a doorway around. So we got a shower room on the same floor. Hopefully they'll approve it, but I'm sure they'll find another reason not to. So yeah, I mean, it's a low risk strategy in terms of the planning outside of Article 4, C3 to C4, C4 to sui generis, and then obviously refinance. But, I always said, I don't know why you'd do a six bed, because, when you start folding in those additional bedrooms, whether it's 7 or 8, your numbers are exponentially better because obviously on your refinance, you've got another bedroom of income against your GDV, and also then the further cash flow thereafter, it just like makes the numbers so much better. But you have got to then get around the headache with the planning, swings and roundabouts. If we were doing it for speed, we would just do six beds under PD. But as I said, those additional bedrooms make all the difference.
Yeah. And so I assume, are you buying with a bridge, getting the planning, the PD, etc. sorted, and then that lender
Mm.
kind of flips you onto like a development loan?
Yeah. So what we'll do is we always do development finance.
Mhm.
Yeah, we'll raise senior debt through like a commercial broker. We use commercial acceptances, which are like a subsidiary of Close Brothers. So we always use them. Got a good relationship with them, and then we'll raise like private investor money, some cases, or we use our own funds for the deposit. And what the lender will do, so the senior debt, they'll lend to you based on the six bed scheme. Obviously, the lender's never going to take on planning risk, but obviously we know we can be a six bed under permitted development. So they'll say, right, as a six bed, it's worth, I don't know, 550, and as a seven bed, it's worth 650. So we'll obviously borrow whatever it may be, 65% loan to GDV, or 65, 70, 75, depending on what the lender is, but loan to GDV of the six bed scheme, and then we'll just build it out. And then obviously once we've got full planning in place, finish the conversion, we'll then just refinance. We're not getting like an uplift on the development loan as and when we get
Okay.
planning, because planning is always the last bit. Because we've got to do two plan applications, say that takes 4 or 5 months if you get pulled into committee. Generally, we've finished the work in that case, and we're paid up. So we don't need any further funding. It's just a case of getting refinanced at that point.
And so I guess kind of almost answered my follow-on question then is how are you lining up starting the actual works with the applications in for, I guess, the PD and then the getting that seventh room as well?
Yeah. So once we've got a house under offer, between offer and exchange, obviously we've got to get the bridging or development lender surveyor out. At that point, I'll also get the architect out at the same point. Because again, when you're looking at these houses, they all do vary slightly. And obviously, I'm quite good with a laser measure. I'm thinking, yeah, that works. That works. Obviously, you need to meet the minimum space requirements. But again, I just want to ensure that I've not missed anything. So, architect comes out with the surveyor. So, before we've then exchanged, we've got a set of drawings, and we basically confirm what that property can be. And then even prior to exchange, we're putting in the lawful development certificate to go from C3 to C4. And then obviously we'll complete on the property and we'll go straight in. That application obviously takes about 8 weeks. So, assuming these projects take us roughly 15, 16 weeks, the idea is that we should be, as I say, mopping to the front door, planning drops in sui generis, and we're refinanced. But again, if they put it into committee and refuse it, that doesn't always go to plan. But that's the way that we deal with it.
Okay, so yeah, and then let's touch on the commercial conversion stuff. Then what are the deals going to look like on that side?
Yeah, so commercial to HMO project that we've got ongoing at the moment is I bought a 3,500 square foot commercial building. It's over 4 floors. So there's a commercial shop that actually they basically operated across the whole building. They've consolidated into the ground floor, and that left the 3 upper floors, which is about 2,500 square foot vacant. So I went through planning, got planning approval for a 12 bed HMO on the upper 3 floors. All really, really good sized bedrooms, 12s, 13s, 14s. Again, you've got much more space to operate with. Yeah, obviously that got approved. And now we're just in the process of, we're due to start that. But quite annoyingly, our pre commencement conditions got refused. We're on a bit of a bad run at the moment, and that was just purely down to, okay, they said not provided enough information, so we've had to put that back in. So that site's been pushed back for 2 months, but it is quite a sweet deal. If you said to me, "Oh, what's the best deal that you've sort of done or that's in your portfolio. What's the jewel in the crown? I mean, it's probably that one.
Hmm.
Bought that for 600 grand. Ground floor alone rents for like 20 grand a year. So even like a 8 or 9% yield is probably worth 240 grand. And then that basically leaves the upper parts. In terms of the valuations we're getting down here, we get roughly like 100 grand a bedroom. So, technically we're getting like 1.2 for the upper parts for the HMO element, plus then probably like 250 grand for the shop. So circa 1.45. I bought the site for 600. I reckon we can probably convert it for 250. So with our costs, we should be all in for 9, and I'm hoping it'll be valued at 1.4. So it's probably like 500,000 in
Nice.
that one.
Yeah,
And then that
that's
probably cash flows at 60 grand a year.
yeah. I mean, that's what 900 grand, 1.4, 30 odd, I mean, close to 40% margin. No,
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good one. I mean, obviously, you don't have a permit development right to go from, Class C or office to HMO. So obviously there was a bit more of a planning risk, but we got that one over the line. So we're looking forward to starting that one. And it's just such an easy conversion as well. We've got a few internal walls to take out, but it's going to be quite an easy conversion. It's all internal works. So again, working to the 20 grand a bedroom. We should do that for 240. Be all out for 900, and then hopefully we get the right valuation, but I'm quite confident we should do so. Yeah, again, this is why we were sort of moving more towards the commercial to residential. you know that's if you look at the average price of residential across the country, it's like I think it's like 3,000 per square meter, whereas commercials 2,000 a square meter, so you potentially get more for your money. So
yeah,
I just, and
our
as well,
pipelines, our
for
pipelines a lot of commercial
I see something that
conversion stuff.
I
Yeah,
think you posted the other day that you've just signed contracts on something.
yeah,
Is that
just
commercial to
exchanged on
residential?
office, yeah, office to residential. Somewhat probably similar numbers. Well, we're buying for 320. I think we'll be all in for 600. I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head. And then between
It's
eight and
circa
eight.
800. Yeah. I'm actually doing one round the corner. We exchanged on that. We actually complete on it this Friday. Just got a completion statement actually, but that's about 2,200, 2,500 square foot office. So we're going prior approval for 4 flats. It does actually make a 9-bed HMO, but as I said, because of the competition in the area now for HMO rooms, we're actually going to do 4 flats under prior approval. We're getting
Okay.
quite strong room rents, renting those to councils for emergency
Yep.
housing. Again, numbers on that 375. I mean, you've only got 8 grand stamp because it's commercial. I think I'm going to allow probably. I think I think about 150, 180 for the conversion, but 4 1-bed flats should value up at 800. Um, yeah, we're just going to do 4 flats on that. So it's funny because I've said this a number of times on pods, but you used to just wait to hit that £1 million portfolio all those years ago, and like you can just be folded in like £1 million deals, just like they're nothing. Yes, it's much more exciting as you grow.
Yeah. Yeah. We found the same thing. Like the sweet spot of deals for us is anywhere between like 800K and 1.5. It's just because it's just
Mm.
nice chunks to add to the portfolio where operationally, planning wise, it's not a huge leap in terms of the operational complexity and the level of planning risk that you have to take on a timeline. I mean, we're doing a similar to the bread and butter like Victorian house um, deals that you mentioned, 7 bedroom. Their GDV will be 600, but then to do one where the GDV is double that, it just takes the exact same amount of time and
Yeah,
energy and resource release we've found anyway. So yeah, I mean, what's the plan to like? What's the timeline to get to 100 million? Do you think like what does that look like?
I mean, it was a lot longer than 5 years, but since you said 5 years,
Well, we'll
I mean,
see. We'll see.
realistic. Yeah, yeah. I mean,
I'm betting on that the
I mean,
last 12, 24 months is when it kind of there's
it's
the
going to
inflection
be,
point
yeah,
takes
absolutely.
off.
I mean, that's what I said. I think it probably took me, the first 10 years, it took me maybe to get to 10 to 12 mil. I think, with our pipeline, it's probably 17, but obviously now we've got the capital available. So as long as we get the deal flow, I think we could easily be adding 5 mil a year, but like you say, I mean, that's going to exponentially grow. Growth on growth. I'd like to think that. I mean, I'm going to say between 5 and 10. I'm confident I'll get there. It's just actually a matter of time. As long as I live long enough, I'll 100% get there.
Yeah,
But I reckon somewhere between 5 and 10 years. So I'm
I love
older
it.
than you. So it's got to be a consideration for me.
And so fundraising then, what's your experience
Mm.
been going out raising funds? Is it something that's kind of just come naturally to you, or kind of something where you just had to figure it out, make the mistakes? And what does the process look like, or what did it look like when you started out as well?
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, raising funds for me, it would have been in a business sense rather than property.
Sure.
The first time I ever raised money. When we
Okay.
were growing the business, my partner in the business was Neil. We went to, well, it was actually his mum. So we went to Bank of Mum and said, look, we're growing this business. Can we have some money? And, you borrow the first 100 grand and, you sort of get that cash injection and you build the business. And then we started raising, I mean, private investor money. So my experience of raising money is obviously at that point, I didn't have a social media profile, not like I could do now is I could put out, on my story, I need 100 grand, need it for 6 months. And more than likely someone will message me and say, yeah, do you know what? I'll give that to you. Cause obviously built that trust over a long period of time. But, back then it was, again, just talking to the people that and, sort of, it was a funny story really. A fella that used to work for us knew, had a friend and she, he was an ex oil trader. And I remember going to meet him, took all like the company accounts and cash flow forecast. This is what we're trying to do. Went in there, showed him. He went, yeah, great. I'll lend you 300 grand. I was thinking, Christ, that was easy. And funny enough, he then introduced me to his mate, Paul, which was also an oil trader. And he said, yeah, I'd like a bit of that. I'll lend you some money. And I said, oh, how much you think? He said, well, I'll match him. I think I don't even need 600 grand. Like, you know, so my experience of that was just speaking to people around you, even to the people that you don't feel, or may not have access to capital, because it only takes one conversation with someone of their sort of extended network. And because they know you've got that transferable trust whereby they can sort of vouch for you. So I found that really valuable, just speaking to people, sort of telling them what you're up to and finding capital through that avenue. So obviously in property now, it's probably been quite similar. I always feel like the fairy godmother will come along and go, I've got an unlimited pot. I'll give you a credit line facility. Just tell me how much you need, and it's just not been like that. It's always been people that I know, or probably people who or people of their extended network. So yeah, it's obviously become easier now having grown the personal brand, but yeah, that's been my experience really, in raising capital really. Yeah.
Yeah. And just in terms of how you like to structure the fundraising, let's say you would go to, I mean, it sounds like you've secured obviously funding lines with the joint venture partners now. So is it always typically been partner comes in with the equity piece and the shareholding in SPV, or have you ever done anything where it's more people loaning money? Like what have typical structures look
Yeah.
like?
Yeah. So, I mean, before the most recent JV, I would just borrow money, typically
Okay.
do, you know, 50K increments. I mean, I'll never do less than that. I don't want to be managing tens and 20 grands. So 50 grands upwards. I have got some private investors that have lent money to me, just very, secure in a personal guarantee. Obviously, provide the asset and liability statement, which shows, you know, obviously millions of equity in the portfolio. So get them comfortable from that sense. And then I mean, I've got the portfolio which generates quite a decent cash flow as well. So I just service 1% a month to my private investors, and yeah, so I do raise money myself when the joint ventures come in. Obviously, with Tommy and with Dave, obviously they put the capital in, and I had to put some money in with Tommy to sort of fulfill the pipeline. But more recently with the a more recent JV, yeah, as I said, got quite a bit of capital to work with there, so that's not going to be the case. in terms of the structure of that SPV, it's just a case of, we're 50-50 in the company. The investor will put the money in on a 50-50 equity basis. We'll go through the investment cycle on refinance. Hopefully, the idea is that we get all our money out. If not, at the end of it, we said, right, oh, okay, well, look, we had to leave 100 grand in that one. At that point, I'll say, well, look, there's my 50 grand and I'll make up my half at the back end. That's how I'm going to structure it with that. I mean, if we go too fast and I don't have the money to sort of make it up at the back end, we'll have to look at the shareholding or maybe, pay through the cash flow of the portfolio or something. But, we've got a few options there. So, yeah, that is the plan. But that's the way I structure it, really.
Do you charge acquisition fees or project management fees to the SPV?
No, do you know what? I actually saw you put that in your YouTube video. I felt like that was quite interesting. So you are bringing on the investor, but because you've gone out, sourced the deal, you're going to charge the SPV a sourcing fee technically. So you're
Yeah.
technically cash flowing your joint venture to sort of provide the income to build out the team. Is that your thinking?
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's fairly from my experience, more so in the bigger development world, it's fairly standard practice. And then especially obviously you look into the more institutional world of private equity, etc. A lot of these big private equity funds, they hammer their investors with fees. They have the acquisition fees, they then have the management fees. Well, it's similar. They have management fees and then they have the disposition fees on the exit as well. And obviously, like hedge funds kind of run on management fees, etc. But we found it, for example, one of the developments we're doing, the Cambridgeshire development, like the banks are even asking, is like, you guys are not going to put an acquisition fee in there? There's a no sourcing fee? And then they wanted to see kind of obviously project management fees, etc. So in the development world, it's very common practice, and so I've done it on a number of JVs up until this point. And I think as long as the investors kind of understand, one, that it's there, you're not trying to hide it from them. Two, they can understand why it's there, and then as long as the numbers still make the sense, like we're not squeezing the margin, etc. It's yeah, it makes sense. So, I mean, if we're paying a sourcer
Yeah.
a sourcing fee, we're not going to double up on fees. But if we've sourced something off market, then a 2% sourcing fee doesn't seem unreasonable. And then, like, I've even got some friends that charge their investors like a personal guarantee fee. So if they're personally guaranteeing money from the lender, they would forget the
Mm.
amount they charge, but they will also then charge their investor a fee for having to personally guarantee money as well, a percentage of the amount they're PGing. So I think for me anyway, I think it's useful to have it in there just with cash flows of the business, but
Mm.
equally, obviously not
Yeah.
necessary if you can survive without them.
Yeah. 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 Having now you've mentioned it, I probably would have done something like that. But yeah, I mean, because if we want to get to 100 million, we are going to have to build that team, around us in terms of admin support and portfolio
Yeah.
managers, etc. And obviously that needs to be funded from somewhere. Um, yeah, I can definitely see the value in that, but yeah, I'm not sure I can go back now and renegotiate my joint
Yeah.
venture terms, but I can definitely see the value in doing that.
Yeah. As long as the numbers still make sense and as long as it's still transparent. I know of a couple people, or one friend of mine at least, that he would then just, that acquisition fee, for example, would just come off his profit share at the end. So it's almost the amount was fronted. But I mean, you can get creative with these things.
Hmm.
But so do you, in terms of your cost structure, or kind of the relationship with your brother-in-law, who's the contractor, are you, is there a project management fee in there at all, or is it kind of just the fixed price contract with the contractor and that's it?
Yeah, so the way we operate is, we buy all of our material and then just pay the guy's labor. So
Okay.
there's no profit from his side, but there is the incentive. And the way we operate the incentives, if you finish on budget and on time, then obviously, there's that incentive there. So I think that works really, really well. Especially if you've got multiple projects, it has really ensured that we get these projects over the line, on budget and on time because he's conscious about it. So I guess you could say that's his profit in a sense, but we call it like an incentive because it's, I guess, performance driven.
And how do you arrive at the incentive amount that he's going to
What the
receive?
incentive
It's it,
amount is.
yeah, or is it like, is it a
Yeah, well,
percentage of the profits or? case by case?
Yeah, no, I think we've just done it on like a set. I mean, because obviously we've been focused on HMOs, we've just said, well, look, it's £1,000 per bedroom.
Okay.
So if you're on time, on budget, and technically from my side, I'm thinking, well, if a project's 16 weeks, if we can sort of, finish 4 weeks quicker, because we've got the incentive in place, I'm going to be rented out 4 weeks quicker. But technically, I'm just going to be moving on the first month's rent as an
Yeah.
incentive. So it's technically not costing me anything, but it's just, it's ensuring that we get these projects, completed on time and on budget.
Yeah. And so what's the management look like throughout the delivery phase? Is it very much just kind of handed over to them and that's it? Or what kind of systems and tools are you using to kind of track the progress of the pipeline?
Yeah. So at the moment, I wouldn't say any sort of platform. I mean, yeah, obviously we've got our deal flow. I mean, probably got maybe 3 or 4 deals in conveyancing at any one time. In terms of the actual build itself, I mean, sort of the guys are left up to their own devices, really. I mean, obviously, from completion, they pick up the key, deliver the site. The build team will liaise with building control, and obviously get it signed off. But yeah, really, my role is completely hands off from that side. I mean, obviously, I'll go down if we're doing a high end HMO. I'll have some sort of design input, but really, if you're going to build £100 million portfolio, going down and you're looking at what LVT flooring you're putting down is, it's, you need to obviously think a lot bigger than that. So yeah, I mean, obviously, yeah, I enjoy it. I like going to site. My sort of role is to go out, raise capital, find the deals, liaise with agents, and network in that sort of regard, and then just leave the boys up to their own devices to really deliver the projects, on time and on budget. So yeah, I wouldn't say we're sort of using any fancy management software as such. I don't feel like we are, yeah, delivering enough projects. I mean, on the educational side, we use stuff like Asana and obviously we've got our
Sure.
online platform, but yeah, on the build side, not as much.
Interesting. Interesting. How's the Lambo? How long you had it
The
for now?
Lambo that you made me buy, you, yeah, there's a story in that. Yeah, I mean, I was looking at a Hurricane. I think my budget was probably much lower than the budget that, yeah, Tyler had in mind for me. He's like, message my mate Max, Pangborn Lamborghini, he'll look after you. Next thing I know, I'm spending 50 grand more than what I actually had. Got a much better car now, but yeah, it's good fun. To be honest, I mean, I don't bring it out that often.
Mhm.
I see you drive yours like all day, every day in any condition. Yeah, which is
Yeah, I
great.
mean, thing is, living in London for me, you don't put too much mileage on things. If I'm going to the gym, it's a couple blocks away. It's not too far. I don't actually drive it too much, to be honest. And maybe I'm sure you can understand this as well. Like the more you use something, the less you appreciate it. Almost for me, like the best
Yeah,
feeling is if we've been on holiday for like 2, 3 weeks or a month, come back, get in the car, that first 10 minutes driving it again, it's the most fun in the world. But
feels like a new car.
yeah, but the V10, I found the V10 a lot more fun to drive. I do miss the V10. The
Yeah,
V12, it's got a lot of theatre and drama, but it's not the most comfortable thing in the world.
keep saying you keep getting pulled over. Is that just a London thing? Is it?
The primary reason is because I don't have a front number plate, because there's nowhere
Ah,
to put
okay.
a front number plate without ruining the aesthetics of the car. And then I live in one of the most heavily policed areas in London. I've got MI Semi 5, National Crime Agency, Parliament, Buckingham Palace, all within a kilometre. And so it's
Mm.
just every corner you turn is police. And so inevitably, one in every X amount of cars is just going to pull you over. But if you're nice to them, they're nice to you and they let you on your way. So
Yeah. How similar? Obviously, I mean, obviously, we're both on that path to 100 million. I mean, is your path similar? Now you've heard a bit more about my story. Do you think? I mean, obviously, I mean, everyone's different, but are you on that similar sort of? Is that your thought process in terms of commercial to residential, sort of £1 million projects? You're going to build and retain everything. Pull in joint venture partners.
yeah, plan is to build and retain everything. I mean, might be some instances where we develop an asset that we might not want to hold on to, or it might just make more sense at that time to exit, realize the profits, and put it into something else. Primarily, the pipeline right now is commercial to resi, so either HMO or apartments at that 800K to we've got a hotel we're buying at the moment. That'll be a 2 million GDV that will convert into apartments. So I think if we can do close to 10 million in GDV over the next 12 months, I'd see that as a big win. And then slowly it will be a mix of both, like increasing the cadence and frequency of doing deals, which will be just making sure we've got really dialed in systems, operations, team, but then also increase the size of deals. So I definitely think as we get more into it, size of commercial conversions will increase. And so that kind of GDV of the portfolio size will increase in bigger chunks. And then, yeah, I just see it will be get exponential. So maybe in the last 12 months of this 5-year plan that I've kind of thrown out there, we might do more GDV in that last 12 months than we do in the first 3 years, for example. So
Yeah.
kind of just, it's hard to really forecast beyond like 12 months because who knows? But I don't think we're going to do any ground up stuff for a while, just given where the market's at and how long it takes with
Are you
planning
still
and
doing the
stuff.
ground up stuff with you're still doing the ground up stuff?
Yeah, well, we got the we got the
Your new build brands?
yeah we got the I got the Cambridgeshire development we're doing with Rosie, who I've known Rosie for like we went to school together, so that was very much I was on the acquisition side, the capital raising side. Rosie, she's just a wizard when it comes to development and construction, so that hopefully should be exiting before the end of this year. But then beyond that, I haven't really had an ambition to keep filling the pipeline with ground up stuff.
No.
Planning is more
So that won't
painful.
form part
Yeah.
of the 100 million.
No, we're gonna sell that. We're gonna sell that, and then I'll just then take the profits from that and dump it into the pipeline of deals that we're doing on the commercial
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. I was going to say, when you say you do achieve 100 million in 5 years, what level do you think you'll be leveraged at that point?
That's a good question. Definitely not 75%. I wouldn't want to be.
Yeah, it definitely wouldn't be 75% on 100 mil.
I
I always
honestly
feel
don't
like
know.
60/40 feels.
Yeah. It depends on the yields of the assets ultimately. But as we get bigger and bigger, we'll be going more and more risk off because like leverage is not your friend at scale.
No.
Leverage is great when you're on a crash course and you're showing people how you can obviously stretch your pounds, but
Yeah.
lev- leverage is your friend in a good market, but when you're at scale and
Yeah. I think that's, yeah, I agree. I mean, obviously, there's been a lot said about sort of high end, HMO commercial valuations, and a lot's been said about those more recently. And I definitely feel you got to tread carefully with those. I'd never want my sort of gross loan on exit to be more than sort of like a bricks and mortar value. I think you've got to tread a little bit carefully. But again, it is
good
probably
point.
investor specific. I mean, if you've got, capital around you, you've got access to capital, and you've got and the HMOs, which are technically, leveraged up to the eyeballs. If they just form a small part of your portfolio, then, I'd say, maybe it maybe makes sense, because even if you're borrowing the money at 5.5, 6%, it's cheap money, isn't it? So you might as well
Yeah.
leverage up your commercial vows and your HMOs. But again, you've got these people that are, as you say, going out on the course. They want the unicorn, all money out deal. They're going to have a, 700 grand mortgage on a bricks and mortar house that's worth 450 grand. If your portfolio consists of five of those, you've got no other assets, no other capital. When you're, when you're putting like 3% arrangement fees on those things every 2 years, it's a quick way to lose control. So yeah, I always think it's interesting when you get to 100 million. That's what sort of, where you'd be leveraged.
I've just learned so much from I got go on, I'll let you finish.
I was going to say to you, I mean, obviously, as you start folding in the portfolio, obviously the plan would be to acquire more, obviously more asset, whether that be just picking stuff up or whether that be through development. Would you then go back and be refinancing the stuff that you acquired in the earlier stages, or do you feel that you just let that sit in the portfolio? Or
Again, it depends on the balance sheet. It depends on the level of leverage we have, and the individual assets. So a point I was about to make is I've learned so much from spending times with guys that work in in real estate at an institutional level. So a couple of my closest friends, they work in
Yeah.
private equity real estate. They're working for funds where they're managing billions and billions, and they're doing transactions that are 100 mil plus. And it was maybe about 3 or 4 years ago that I started kind of spending more time with these guys and starting to kind of see how they think about real estate and asset management. And it's always an interesting conversation because the likes of you and I, for example, maybe a lot of people watching this, I call it like we kind of start at the grassroots level. You start with the single lets and then you scale up a little bit more, a little bit more. But then these guys that I've referenced, the way they get into real estate is the complete other side is they go study finance at university, do a master's, whatever, work their way up within the corporate world. How they think about real estate is totally different. And they definitely look at it from the perspective of capital allocation, risk. It's all spreadsheets and financial models, and it's fundamentally a finance game. I always say, look at the biggest real estate companies in the world, in any city, whether it's London, New York, whatever, their offices are in the finance district because they understand that it's a finance game. And it's why I'm just a big advocate of if you really want to scale a property business, you need to be able to think and act like a CFO and like a capital allocator. Otherwise, if you don't know your balance sheet, if you don't know your cash flows and the sensitivity of your business, all it takes is the market to change and whatnot for it to get squeaky bum time. So yeah, that's been an interesting learning experience for me, and it's something I'm thinking a lot about as this portfolio grows. And the profile of investors will change as well, because maybe you've seen this, that the investors that want to throw bigger tickets, their appetite for risk is totally different. And then that
Mm,
completely changes the type of assets and the strategy that they want to do.
yeah.
You show a big investor like a 50% ROI on a juicy JV, some of them that's red flags. They're like, what's the risk? I don't want to take that level of risk. So I think that will also be
Yeah.
something that will change.
So I think the variable in that is their investment time horizon, isn't
Yeah.
it? They're always much more, it's not about quick cash. It's stable, consistent returns for the long term. So yeah, they're definitely their investment time horizons differently. And I think definitely when you get into these JVs is having that same sort of, yeah, having the same sort of vision in terms of the expectation. I think that's a real key thing. Yeah, I mean, we always try and go for the 50% return on capital employed following a following a refinance, but it's not always possible. But definitely, I mean, going back to, I mean, getting to 100 million. I mean, I'm 40 years old now as well, so I'm thinking, well, as long as I'm there by the time I'm 50, what did they say? I think Warren Buffett's, 98% of his net worth he accrued, after his 55th or 65th day. I actually don't know what the stat is over his birthday. So, the fun happens, a lot further down the road. So, it's
Yeah.
just got to build the asset and let inflation do the hard work, really.
I love that. Cool. No, I mean we've covered a lot there. Time horizon's a big one. One of my investors yesterday, he literally said the same thing to me. He's committed multiple seven figures over the next 24 months. Like verbally, he's not throwing all the cash in the bank right now, but for him, he's like, for me, I'm just thinking 5 to 10 years with this. I don't really care too much about deal to deal. I mean, I want to know what you're
Yeah.
buying, but for him, he's risk off. He's like, I don't want to take crazy risk. First question is like, what's the risk? What's the risk? What's the risk? And I think that was a big learning curve for me with investors as well. Is like the bigger ticket investors, their focus is actually less about return and more about risk and getting that risk adjusted return. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things you said in your YouTube video was about the cash flow of a portfolio, whereby, again, the portfolio will provide a level of cash flow, but that's not the game. I think you said something along the lines of, it's just about building the asset and the long term capital appreciation, which, that I think a lot of people focus on the short term cash, which is, I think it's all about the long term, wealth generation rather than short term cash. So yes, a portfolio of that size would throw off a level of cash flow, wouldn't it? But technically, I mean, a lot of that would just go straight back into the deals anyway.
Yeah. I mean, there's active and passive income, right? And passive income is far more valuable than active income, but it's much harder to obtain. And I think some people, they're like, if I can get to £5,000 or £10,000 a month in income with property as the vehicle, maybe then see that would be amazing for me. And that is, you can live a very comfortable life on that amount of money. But I think if you want to get to 5 to 10K a month income, doing that through building a portfolio, it will take a very long period of time. And once you do get a portfolio that's paying you 5 to 10K a month net income, you don't want to be spending all of that net income because, again, just one thing has to change for that to kind of, yeah, screw you over a little bit. For me, it's like, I like to live a nice lifestyle. Like for me, my philosophy with spending money has always been, I like the book Die with Zero. I don't know if you've heard it, but it kind of talks about how the value of money when you're younger is greater than when you get older. You know, going on a driving a nice car in your 20s is a totally different experience than driving a nice car in your 60s. Not that I definitely don't spend all the money I make, but the point being is I always knew I wanted to kind of be able to do nice things while I was young. And the best way to kind of get that income up is through active income, through businesses, selling a service, selling a product. And then the investment development stuff is just a wealth building game. That's where the wealth comes from. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. You diversifying it all. You're not going to put Bitcoin on the balance sheet like Grant Cardone, are you?
No, I buy Bitcoin, believe it or not. I take a portion of my net income each month and dump it into Bitcoin. I mean, I am educated on it, but one thing I would say, which is a very positive signal for me, is my most intellectual friends, and I'm talking like high IQ, gifted friends that even outside of crypto have built unbelievable businesses, unbelievable achievements, is those that have studied it are very, very bullish on it with a lot of conviction. So, and I see it. So it's, yeah, I'm making a bit of a bet on Bitcoin, but that's not something
Yeah.
I'm advocating to
What
the
about
audience.
altcoins? You stick to the
No,
orange pill?
yeah, I'm a Bitcoin maximalist, I think. I'm sure maybe some
Maxi.
of these
Yeah.
altcoins. And you? Are you buying?
I mean, I have been in crypto for a while, but I've probably been sidetracked by the next shiny coin, the layer twos alts,
Mm.
rather than just sticking to the orange pill. Yeah, yeah. I mean, definitely, I'm starting to put that on the balance sheet through Strike.
Yeah, same thing. Same thing.
Yeah, yeah. So, which actually I never even knew you could do until the other day. I didn't think that sort of the regulatory framework allowed for sort of Bitcoin on the balance sheet. And again, it's the on ramp into crypto as well from a UK limited company. But yeah, I mean, obviously through Strike now that's possible. So you're looking to feed some of the rental profits into the Bitcoin and leave that sat on the balance sheet. So yeah, building a bit of a position over there, but yeah, a little bit of a diversification. But it'll be interesting to see where it goes. I think Elon's not happy. Trump's just they've just been voted through that his big beautiful bill, haven't they? Where another three trillion of government debt, taking it to about 40 trillion. So it's only going to go one way, which is really interesting. It's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah. Anyway, so before we wrap up, Mitch, I've enjoyed this chat. If you were to kind of condense within 60 seconds a game plan for someone looking to get into property and really kind of build a property portfolio as a business, i.e., go out, raise capital, find some deals, build a good team around them, what
Mm.
would the game plan be?
I mean, if you've got again no access to capital, if you're starting from zero, obviously you're going to have to, I go entry level strategy. It's going to have to be, deal sourcing, rent to rent. You're going to have to find an element of cash flow to survive. I think as soon as you're, cash flow positive, start siphoning that into your assets. You'll want to be owning assets for the long term. I mean, you probably want a high cash flow in assets. I'd probably, focus on HMOs, and then from there, probably start stepping up in terms of, flips, commercial to residential conversions. Obviously, that is going to take time. Build the experience. Take little steps rather than take big steps in terms of the knowledge on each of those strategies. Yeah, and then just build a really good team around you as you sort of move up the ladder, get some good people around you that are loyal and can support you on your sort of mission. Yeah. And then obviously, spread the word. So, share your story and, build your network, become more resourceful, be more resourceful, then everything becomes a lot easier. So, yeah, it's a long road. I mean, nothing happens overnight. I mean, people see the Lamborghinis now, but, that's, 13, 14, 15 years in the making. Nothing happens overnight. Sleepless nights, personal guarantees, putting the house on the line. It's not for everyone. So, enjoy it along the way, stay balanced and don't blow yourself up.
Love it. Cool. All right. Massively appreciate your time, mate. I'm sure we'll connect soon, collaborate on some more content, and I'll drop obviously all your socials below where this video is going to be posted as well for those that want to connect with you. So yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah, cool. Well, no, great to chat, mate. And yeah, I'll catch you soon.
Catch you later.
Take care, mate. Cheers. Bye bye.